And I was sitting there looking. I'm from California, and there's like 20 people I love in this room, and that only happens in AA. And Sandy just gave me, well, I'll tell you this, my sobriety date is August 10th, 1980. So, which I must say is a personal best. Second place is 12 days. And let me tell you, at 12 days I was really impressed. So much I drank. But Sandy just gave me his 30-year chip, and it just meant a lot to me. And I'm just love AA, love sobriety, love my friends who, Gene and Linda and Karen and Barefoot Charlie, drove all the way through Alligator Alley to get here. That's dangerous, right? Just love them. We go back many years, and just saw Chris and Christine walk in, and Greg. We go back over 20 years, and I know I'm going to forget somebody, but I just feel so lucky and blessed and fortunate to still be interested in my recovery. I said to my sponsor when I called him to thank him for all the help on Tuesday that I thought I would be a little bit better by now. And he said, it's a sign of recovery to be appalled at your recovery. That's why we have the sponsor to just go, oh, good. Oh, good. I want to thank the committee for having me. I just love this hotel. And I know Lee was somehow involved in this. I feel like I'm in an episode of Mad Men here. It's so cool. And my home group is Sunday Noon, Ohio Street. That's where I am. And it's kind of interesting. It's not on Ohio Street. It's on Ohio Avenue. But in AA, we just get to rename stuff. And no one knows why we call it Ohio Street or why it started, but that's where I am every Sunday. That was actually the first meeting I was walked over to by a girl. Hopefully I'll tell it in my story, but I do remember two things she told me on that walk over on August 10th, Sunday morning, August 10th, 1980. She told me three things. I can only remember two. She told me that alcoholics are more sensitive than other people. I love that. And she said they're more intelligent than most people. I really love that. And as my friend Scott would say, you will not hear that in an Al-Anon meeting. But we can say it here. Anyway, I have a big full life filled with people I love. I'm capable of loving people, and this always brings me. I'm capable of feeling the love of other people. So I'm like a healthy pond. Water's coming in and water's going out. And that's what you've turned me into. When I got here, none of that was happening. I was unloved, unlovable, and totally unaware of you. I was in the bondage of self, trapped in my own mind, and cut off. I had cut off everything in my life. So I love the step into the sunshine. That has been the journey I've had here. Is the journey from alone in a yellow rocking chair drinking cheap scotch to a journey in a world filled with love and life and the good and the seemingly bad. It's been an interesting journey, and hopefully by the time I'm 31 I won't be quite as appalled at my recovery, but I hope to one day at a time to keep on this journey. I'm going to tell my story in a chronological way, and they gave me a lot of time, so I'm going to start, let's just say I was born worried. Let's start there. I still worry. And it really works because none of the stuff I worry about ever happens, so apparently it just keeps it at bay. Why not? I can make a career out of that. Someone could say, I'm thinking of doing this. What's the worst that could happen? And I could immediately give them all the bad scenarios. I've gone through it all. I went through my hypochondriacal phase in sobriety. I had every disease except crib death during that period of time. And rickets. I haven't had rickets yet. And I do want to say yet. It's still on the table. I haven't taken it off. But I was born a nervous little kid. I was the youngest of 3 kids in Southern California. My mom got married at 19. She married a World War II vet. And in those days, you know, women didn't move out. The only way to get away from your parents was to get married. And she got married at 19. By the time she was 22, she had 3 kids. And I was the youngest of the 3 kids. They lived in a tract home over in East LA. The husband did not look like he was going to be a great provider. The first piece of furniture they bought for their house was a bar. It's not one of the 20 questions, but it could be. Did you buy a bar before you bought a bed? Yes. You answered one question right. Go to AA. It's true, a freestanding bar. And just my earliest memories, and I have a lot of memories young, because just being worried and looking at the world through my little blue eyes and going, this doesn't look right. This doesn't feel right. Everyone seems like it felt like people were living a life or doing what they do, and I had voices talking to me, and it didn't feel like I was in sync. There were a lot of things going on in my head, and it just didn't feel comfortable. I was, just to give you some of my early symptoms, I was a bedwetter, a teeth grinder, a nail chewer, a foot wiggler. By the way, that's called idling. You see that a lot in AA. There's one. And you cross that foot and it's going like that. If you gave me a pencil, I ate it. I was a kid in first grade whose desk was in the hall. Teachers like you. They just like you elsewhere. Contain yourself. Later, at 9 years old, they took me for an upper GI to test me for ulcers. If you see a kid like that, give him a drink. Spare us all the trouble. I needed a drink, and I didn't get a drink until I was 14. So there were 14 dry, long years. It was just to being this nervous kid. It was, and not feeling comfortable in my own skin, and having these voices. And my mom was to get divorced when I was about 4 or 5, marry my stepfather. I think there was a little overlap in the relationships. It was a good code, wasn't it? Just in case this tape finds its way back to the desert. And they didn't have communication skills in those days. We still don't in my family, but we're doing the best we can. They didn't sit the kids down and say, I'm getting divorced, I'm marrying this guy. They just... The message that's communicated in my family through sign languages, tilt heads, hand signals is, he's got money, don't screw this up. He doesn't provide, he's getting the bar and the divorce, we're going here. He's got a station wagon, he's got a house, he's got a business, you're going to camp, shh. And shh, for me, is tough. Contain yourself. Be quiet. Keep it inside. Shut down. And he had 3 kids, and my mom's 3 kids, and they threw us all into a house, and there's 8 of us living in this house, and just lay low. Just contain yourself. Don't rock the boat. And I did, and I was uncomfortable. The significant thing that happened at that time for me, because I was alone, I lived a lot in my head, and the Dodgers had just left Brooklyn and moved to LA, and they became my first obsession in my life. And so all those people whose hearts were broken by the Dodgers leaving Brooklyn, they came to lonely kids like me in LA, and I fell in love with them, and I fell in love with baseball, and my life revolved around them. And every single night I'd get that transistor radio up to my ear and listen to the voice of our announcer, still to this day, Vince Scully. When I hear his voice, to this day my blood pressure drops and I feel like all is good in the world. And I became obsessed with playing baseball. And it turned out I was a really good baseball player. and I became the star of the team, and I was the best hitter and the best player. And I got all my self-esteem, and I created little fantasy worlds of baseball and fantasy teams and kept statistics and created this little bubble I could live in, because I can't be with you, because you make me nervous and you look comfortable and I feel like a Martian. And in Little League, I'm the pitcher and the shortstop and the best hitter. And around the age of 11 or 12, you move up from Little League to Pony League, and the competition gets stiffer. And all of a sudden I got afraid of the baseball. And I didn't know this until I wrote an inventory, because I buried those feelings, but I got afraid. And when the batter's afraid of the ball, everyone knows. You can't contain yourself. You have to step towards where the pitch is coming to hit it. And I was stepping towards my mommy. And it's funny today, but it's not funny for a 12-year-old kid when you see you're stepping in the bucket and trying to get away. And what I did was, what I set up a pattern that I was to do for deep into sobriety, is I wasn't going to ask for help. I was going to give up the thing I love the most and ask for help or be vulnerable or be teachable. And what I did is I picked a fight with the coach and gave up the thing I absolutely love the most than to ask for help. And it seems like the day I put down my baseball glove with my left hand, I started drinking with my right. And it didn't really happen in that, but it was pretty close. We moved from Long Beach. We were living in an area in kind of southern LA where it was, so we were the only Jewish family there. And it's like any kid, you just want to be like everyone else, and you don't want to be different. And we moved to Beverly Hills, where it's about 90% Jewish, and I started high school in Beverly High, and my first thought was, I don't think I'm Jewish enough to fit in around here. So I really grew up on the mean streets of Beverly Hills. Get that right out of the way now. The tough ghetto. I started there and immediately shifted into ghost mode and lay low. It felt like going there in my first weeks there that everyone had grown up together in the same. They were all born on the same day in the same hospital, went to camp together, and were friends for life, and you're the outsider and we're really not that interested in you. And I laid low the first couple weeks there, and I'm taking inventory and listening and finding out that this guy's father is a famous producer, and this guy's mother's an actress. Oh, you know her. And this guy's father directs that TV show, and this guy's father's a doctor. And I immediately made the calculation that I don't have the DNA to compete around here, that everyone has what it takes, and my father's just the guy who got divorced, who doesn't go to work, who got the bar. So the best I'll ever do is just, I gotta keep moving. I can't let you really get a straight on angle at me, or you're gonna find out I'm not smart enough to be in this crowd. So I laid low and didn't make any friends, and after a couple weeks I made friends with a new guy who just came to town, and he didn't even have a father, so I must have felt better than him, and we started hanging out together. And one weekend he said to me, he said, everyone from Beverly goes up to this club on the Sunset Strip. Do you want to go? And I guess my defenses were down, and I said, okay. And we took the bus up to this club on the Strip, and all the kids were there, and hanging out, and talking to, boys and girls were talking to each other. That was scary. And they were dancing. And I'll tell you, to this day, if you see me dancing, I have a new sobriety date. Just to get that out of the way right now. And gave up on that night. Come on, Greg, let's get out of here. And we went back, and about a week later, he said, you want to go back to the club? And I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, my mom's out of town, I have a quart of vodka. And I said, I'll be right down. And I was living in this house where there was very little drinking at all. I don't think there was any drinking at that point in my family. My stepfather never did one thing to excess ever in his entire life. The only exposure I had to drinking was my father would have visitation every 2 weeks, and he'd take us to spend the night with him. And first he'd take us out to a bar for dinner and put us at the bar. And then I remember just looking at the bottles and the glasses and thinking, I like the way those look. And then he'd take us home to his apartment, and he got the bar in the divorce, and it was turned where you could see all the bottles and the glasses. And he'd put us 3 kids on the couch. He'd get a microphone and a bar stool and a fedora and dangle a cigarette out of his mouth and start singing sad Sinatra songs to us. And I loved it. I was so attracted to that. I still am. Today I don't take the first song. I mean, I love loser songs in the wee small hours of the morning. I mean, I'll tell you, as a 10-year-old kid, I captured a line from Old Man River and identified with it. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. That is not normal for a 10-year-old kid. So my only exposure to drinking was this experience of sitting on the couch and watching my father drink, and it looked glamorous. So when Greg said, I have this quart of vodka, I'm there. And we'll walk down to his where he was living and poured a quart. That's how we started, a quart of vodka, a quart of orange juice, and somehow we knew to put a little Galliano on top and stirred and started drinking. And I sighed for the first time in my life, somewhere I think between the first and second drink. It was just the big and it felt like all the voices quieted down. And it felt, and I think we're all like searching for the words of what alcohol did for us, but it was that, I don't know if it disarms you or makes me bulletproof or both, but it was magical for me from the get-go. We finished off, we kept drinking, we took the bus back up to the club that night, and we were the only 2 people on the bus and lost each other on the way there, and I didn't need him anymore. Because I have confidence or I don't have fear. And I walked into the club that night, and it felt, Sandy says it in his story, and it reminded me, I had exactly the same experience. It felt like I walked into that room, that club that night, and they turned around and said, who's the new cool guy in town? Let's go meet the new guy. And apparently if alcohol does that for you, you end up in AA if you're lucky. I guess it doesn't do that for everybody. It was magical to me. It was just, and it became, I didn't even know it myself. It became the most important thing in my life, and I didn't let anyone know. Because I knew in my family it was like, don't be like your father. He's a loser, and he drinks too much. And I thought, immediately from the beginning of my drinking, I was hiding alcohol, hiding how much I drank, and absolutely hiding how important it was for me to find out when I was going to get the next drink. And I had it going. And in those days, I also grew up in the 60s, so there were a little drugs. I probably did less drugs than anyone growing up in the 60s. I found out pretty quick that marijuana isn't good for paranoid people. It's kind of like, don't look at me, don't talk to me, give me your cheeseburger. Peace. Did a little LSD. Well, my brother was the dealer in Beverly Hills, so we always had an array of, we always had 100 kilos actually of marijuana in our basement. So it was an interesting house we had going on. He gave me LSD one night. My parents came home and found me watching Static on television. You gotta be old to remember Static, right? They don't have Static anymore. I feel sorry for the young people. There's no more Static. My parents walked in and said to my brother, what did you give him? But I was a drinker. I mean, in those days there were the heads and the juicers, and I'm a juicer hanging out with the heads. I'm a scotch drinker, I'm a vodka drinker. In the early days I was a beer drinker, but that seemed like it was drinking beer, and I don't mean to put down the beer drinkers, it just seems like it's going from Miami to New York via Los Angeles. And you pee a lot. Just a lot of time in the bushes. That's my... So immediately became, and on the weekends at Beverly High, there were parents were always traveling, they were out of town, we always had some cool mansion. We were going to have the party in that weekend, and I was immediately the guy who wanted to be in charge of supply. I'm obsessed with supply. You do not let an Al-Anon control supply. They run out and they don't even notice. That's not okay with me. So I would go, I'll take care of the booze, and I would call up someone who would deliver. Gil Turner's Liquor Store, 213-651-2000. If you're in LA planning a slip, just save you. And I'd call them up and order twice as much as was necessary. Because I just don't like the idea of worrying about running out. Because I can't have fun if I got one eye on the bottle and how much you're drinking. You know, and drank. And it wasn't looking to fight with you, it let me be with you. It just toned me down, it took away my fear of you. I don't know to this day what I thought you were going to do to me. But it made me just be me. Drank my way through high school that way. I drank at 16. I had alcohol poisoning. I drank a quart of scotch and water one night and couldn't stop vomiting the next morning. I remember we had a sunken bathtub. My head was dangling in throwing up liver bile, taking a solemn oath, I'll never do this again, anything to make you this sick. I called the family doctor, please don't tell my parents. They were having enough drama with my drug pusher brother, don't tell him about this, I'll never drink again. He gave me something, and somewhere in the middle of the next day I figured out that you shouldn't put water in scotch, it could make you really sick. Honest to God, and drank the next day after alcohol poisoning. It was the most important thing in my life, and graduated high school in 1969, and my grades went down every semester I was in high school. I don't know, there are people who achieve a lot drinking. I'm not one. I kind of lose interest in everything. And at Beverly, 95% of the kids go off to four-year colleges, good schools. They're smart kids, and I knew at graduation that I was one of the losers. I remember sitting there going, I'm being exposed, now they know I'm dumb. Because I had this kind of attitude that if you try really hard and get a B, they'll know you're dumb. So I might as well get a D and not try. And that'll get you into very few schools. And my options were very limited. It was either the city college in the neighborhood, or my buddy Joey found a school in San Francisco called Menlo College that you can go to. And the only requirement to get in there is parents who'd write a check and potential. And I had potential. People always told me I had potential. So I applied there and got in there, and it was a school of four. I'll tell you, it was one of the last years. It was an all-male college. After it went co-ed, one of the first women I heard that went there was Patty Hearst. So this was not let's just say it wasn't Harvard Medical School. And they put us in a, I don't know how they knew. They were building a new dorm, and they put 6 of us in a trailer behind the campus. They must have pre-qualified us or something. And I met this guy from Iowa the first day in school, in college, and he says, I have a phony ID. You want to go to the liquor store and get liquor? And I thought, I love college. We walked across, we had one of those 5-gallon Sparklets water things in our dorm room. We went over to Beltrama's Liquor and got 5 gallons of vodka. So we put it in the Sparklets thing, and I'm like, this is fantastic. What was my fear all about? And just started drinking, and was drinking, and it was still the fun phase of drinking. It was parties, it was going into San Francisco on the weekends. I wasn't drinking during the day. Now, my friend Joey had gone up there, and his parents, he was also kind of an ADD, hyperactive kid like me, and his parents had taken him to a psychiatrist to see if they can get a medication to calm him down, and the doctor had prescribed a drug called Dexamyl for him. And he acted calm enough to keep those supply lines open, and one day at Menlo, he said to me, I want you to try this drug. And I said, yes, as I always did, and he gave me 30 milligrams of Dexamyl. Now, Dexamyl is Dexedrine in Milltown. What it does is it increases your vocabulary by 32,000 words. And it takes lazy, uninspired students and makes them interested in everything. You smoke, you never need matches because you are never without a cigarette. And I became an alcoholic speed freak for the next 13 years. And let's just say I was quick. Let's just say, I'm studying, man, I'm studying. I'd sit outside and a bird's shadow would go over me and I would come out of my skin. Oh my God. But when I'm not drinking, I'm not on that, I'm restless, I'm irritable, and I'm discontented. And I blame people, places, and things for how I feel, and you can't stay high all the time. And I'm always blaming this school. There's no girls here. It's wet, it rains, it's too small, it's too cold, it's too whatever. I need to get out of here. And you gave me the words for that when I got sober. It's called the geographic. And I didn't know I was going to take myself wherever I went. But I need to transfer, I need to get out of there. In those days it was pre-computer, so you went to the library and you go through the college catalogs and you fantasize about where you want to go. University of Hawaii, Mai Tais, I'm thinking. And then I stumbled across a school, it's called World Campus Afloat, and it's a ship with 400 students on it, and it travels around the world, and I thought, that's about what I want to do. And I called home and said, can I do this? And my mom said yes. I think the idea of getting one of her children off the continent was appealing. And my brother had embarked on what that period of time was to be an 18-year heroin addiction run. So things were getting a little dark and dramatic around the house, and said yes. And it's a privilege, and I'm lucky to be able to do something like that. It turned out it was 300 girls and 100 guys, which are good odds even if you're shy. They send a letter out before you leave saying no drinking, no drugs, or we'll send you home. And I probably thought, who would need to drink in a situation like this? I mean, you're with a bunch of kids traveling around the world. And we left from New York, and it sailed to London, and they took their time to get in classroom time, and it took about 10 days to get there, and I could hardly leave my cabin. I could hear the other students doing, I'd run to the class, go back to my cabin, run to a meal, go back to my cabin. And we finally docked outside London, and I'd made friends with one guy from a class, Peter, and everyone went off to the museums to take in a little culture, and Peter and I went to the pub at the port, drank warm beer for 4 days, and then it was getting enough beer, smuggled aboard the cabin to get enough in me to leave the cabin and do what everyone seemed to be doing naturally. And so I drank my way, my contribution. I drank ouzo in Greece and sangria in Spain. I thought, well, this is almost like a museum. I mean, it's what they're going to do. Rome in the Caribbean. Matus or Madeira. I mean, I remember just doing this. Now, it's so kind of, remember how proud we were of how we drank? We should be embarrassed of that. But I was proud of it, and went through the, I ran across the yearbook recently, and there's pictures of me in doing everything, but I have that drunken kind of look, just got off that, and my grades are going up because I got 3 amphetamine doctors going. I apply to USC, and they take me, and it's looking good on the outside. I'm moving along on the outside, and I'm dying on the inside. But I'm still drinking, and it's still pretty much the fun time. And I'm going to college. I got a girlfriend. The grades go up in the 8 semesters. I did college in 4 years only because I didn't know until I got to AA that you could make it last for 10 or 12. I was not interested in working at all. My only goals were to have money and a tan. That was it. And I figured as long as I could hide in school. So I'm moving on through college, and now I'm graduating. I'm in my last semester, and my stepfather's looking at me like, go away. Get a job. He knew about that self-supporting through your own contributions without ever going to AA. I had never heard of that. It's like they were exhausted with all these 6 kids and my brother and my sister and me, and it's like they wanted to be alone, to kill each other, I think, but they just wanted to be alone. And so I thought, how can I delay this process? And I applied to law school. My mom says, why don't you go to law school? You have a big mouth. Which is not a big mouth. And I applied to one law school and they took me. Oh no, they've made a terrible mistake. And I believe that. It's funny today, but I believe that they meant to reject me and my application got put in the wrong pile. Every cell in my body knew I'm stupid and someone's going to find out any second. And now I'm in law school, they're going to find out right now. But I always like a fresh start, and I'll do the best I can. I'll do the homework. They give you assignments before school starts. My outlining, it's all really clean and neat. I even write clearly in the thing, and I'm ready. I'm ready for school. Okay, let's see how it goes. And they have a little method in law school, Socratic method. And the first day of school, they call me, Steve Abrams. It's Abrams. Alphabetically, I'm screwed, right? I stand up and it's a contracts case, Hamer versus Sidway. And I know the case. I know the case today. And what happened is he tried to engage me and draw out the issue of the case. And what he got, and what I didn't know until I wrote an inventory, who he got was the 12-year-old kid in the batter's box. And what I had then, and what I was having in that class, and what I had many years later in sobriety was a panic attack in front of the class. And if you've never had a panic attack, they're just, I think only women should have them, personally. There's just nothing masculine about a panic attack. It's so weenie, your heart's pounding, you're sweating, you can't engage your brain. It's just awful. And he was really kind, but I couldn't engage the case. I couldn't engage my brain. And I was exposed, in my mind, I was exposed on the first day of class as a guy who didn't belong here. I'm not as smart as you people. I'm just this dumb kid who can make you laugh and I'll disappear. That's the best I'll ever do. And he gave up on me and he was kind. He moved on to someone else and probably no one ever gave it a second thought. But when class ends, what I do, my only tool for living now, I don't go to the teacher and ask for help. I go to Paul's Cafe or bar at the end of the bar. I know how to treat this feeling. I know how to treat this incident. You pour alcohol on top of this and it goes away. And it did. And I got through 2 years of law school pouring alcohol and hiding and not responding when they called my name. And I was somewhere in the middle of the class academically. God, just a couple years ago, it just gave me a chill to think how low your self-esteem must be when they call your name in a room and you don't answer. And what happened is there was a friend of the family who, I always have trouble telling this in a coherent way, but this man, who was a friend of the family, took an interest in me out of the blue. And he lived in Chicago and he had a car dealership and he had a place in Palm Springs. And he called me one time, he says, why don't you come out and we'll play golf together? And I had all these father issues and I thought, oh, there's an adult man. My stepfather had said things like blood is thicker than water. And I knew that that meant I was water. And my real father was a source of embarrassment and disappointment to me. And then all of a sudden this big, successful, charismatic guy took an interest in me and says, let's hang out. We would hang out, and I'd go out to see him on the weekends, and we would golf and drink, and it felt good. And then one day he said, I have no one to turn my business over to, and why don't you come to Chicago? And the part I heard clearly was, I'll make you a millionaire by the time you're 30. He must have mentioned work. I missed that entirely. Totally never heard that. But I immediately took a leave of absence from law school. And before my final year, and off I went to Chicago. And what was going on in this family was the family had had a son who was drinking and swimming and drowned and died. And they were grieving the loss of this kid, and that inspired this man to bring me into his life. And the family psychiatrist called and said, don't come here. This is a mess. And but I had already made up my mind. I had taken a leave of absence, and off I went to Chicago. And he expected me to work. He actually expected me to sell cars, which meant I had to approach people, which was difficult. customers would come in and I'd go hide in the bathroom, which is difficult to sell a car to someone unless they're taking a pee, I guess. And my drinking entered the second phase, fun plus problems. And I couldn't predict when the problems would come. You know, sometimes I'd go out and drink and it was really fun. Sometimes I'd go out and drink and it was really depressing. And then one night this man said to me, he was looking at a new business to buy, and he said, hey, I'm going to bring this stuff home. I'm going to teach you what I look for in a business, what makes it valuable, and come home tonight after work and I'll show you these printouts. And I said, okay, I'll get the scotch because I'm still in charge of supply. And I got a half down the doers and we put it on the kitchen table and he laid out these big computer printouts and we started drinking and he started talking and we drank and he talked, and somewhere during that night he said to me, you know, your mother and I were very close about 9 months before you were born. And, Mom? My next memory is waking up the next morning thinking, did I hear that? Did I wish that? Did I this, that? You know, and I took that information and just pushed it down and put alcohol on top of it. And I was to get arrested. I wouldn't deal with that issue till I was 15, 20 years sober. And got arrested on Christmas Eve in Chicago, drunk driving, and thought Chicago didn't fix it. I'm going to go back to law school and finish up law school. And day of my drunk driving trial, I drove back to LA. I re-enrolled in law school. And now my drinking is, I'm finishing up that last year and driving down Wilshire Boulevard in LA to the school with a bottle between my legs, pouring a drink to get enough alcohol on me to get enough courage to go in the parking lot and have another drink to get enough courage to get out of the car and go into class and sit there. And I got within I got 6 units of graduating law school. I was in my last semester, and they'd given me cap and gown for the graduation and fingerprinted me to take the bar. And I just lost track of a day and an exam and didn't show up, and they flunked me out of law school. And it's a funny thing. And I'm not a lawyer today. People ask me after I speak, I'm not a lawyer today, so that's something for you to be grateful for if you're having trouble today. When you're in law school, you could be a jerk and a loser and a selfish pig, but you're going to be a lawyer. So there's like this hope that it's all going to turn out okay. Once you flunk out of law school, you're just a jerk who went to law school and wasted their parents' money and didn't finish. So the covers are pulled. And I was to enter the depressing, sad, lonely part of my alcoholism. The girlfriend who had been with me for 8 years through it all, through all my misbehaviors and all my verbal abuse and all my depressions and all my bad ideas, finally said, you drink too much. And now I have this drunk driving, and that guy in Chicago mentioned my drinking to me, now my girlfriend mentioned my drinking. And so I went, I said, you know, I've heard of AA, I'll call AA. And I went, I called Alcoholics Anonymous. I think my brother had been sentenced there one time, and I called up AA, and they said, where do you live? And I told them, they said, oh, you can walk over to Ohio Street. There's a meeting there tonight at 8 o'clock. And I said, okay. And I had 3 doubles, and I went over to the meeting, because I can't be around people without. It's so rare to smell alcohol in the meeting these days, but back then it wasn't so rare. And I sat there and cried. I just felt like the biggest loser in the world. I just wanted to be like my stepfather said. Have a drink, have 2, have 3, and stop. I wanted to be the guy who could stop. And I just felt like the biggest loser, like the family letter that's going to go out and say, remember Steve, the one who was going to be a lawyer? Well, we have better news. He's not going to be a lawyer, he's an alcoholic. So I'll celebrate. And then the speaker said something, he probably said 50 things I could have identified with and said me too, but he said one time his wife had poured out all the alcohol, so he went into the bathroom and he drank Scope. And I thought, well, I'm a Scotch drinker, not a Scope drinker, but if I ever get that bad, I know where to go. And so I went home, and there was a caretaker in my building who would go around and water the plants, and I knew he was in AA, and I said to him, "Do you think I could be an alcoholic?" And he said that I was too young. I said, "Don't ask people who know you." So I drank, and I drank for another few years, and it got pathetic. I took a job. The one thing I always want to remember and I always want to talk about is I'm standing in the back. The last conversation I was to have with my stepfather was standing in the backyard of this beautiful home in Beverly Hills, and he couldn't look at me and I couldn't look at him. He was so disappointed in me, and I was ashamed of myself. And so we had a conversation looking away from each other, and he went off to play racquetball and had a heart attack and dropped dead. And what he was to leave my family was the two biggest killers of an alcoholic, is money and free time. Money and free time. And the wheels came off my family. In retrospect, he was really the moderate, normal glue that was holding this family together. And it just got ugly. It got pathetic. My mom got into a half-gallon of vodka drinking a day. My brother was in this heroin addiction. My sister had married an alcoholic. I was turning into, I was an alcoholic at that time and just drinking. And for some reason, I took a minimum wage job in a travel agency. And I kept the job, and I was trying hard to do a good job, and she fired me. I remember telling her, I've been to college and law school. You know, I certainly could. Well, she said, "You may have been a good lawyer, but you're the worst file clerk I've ever had. Good luck. Just don't show up back here." And she gave me a going away present. She gave me a trip to, people always like me, they just want me elsewhere. And she said, "Just don't come back to work, but you can go to France." And I said, "Okay." But I went to AA instead for a little while before the trip, and I got those 12 days. And this time I called in the central office, said someone to pick me up and take me to a meeting, and I got 12 days. And I remember telling this guy, who was kind of like a sponsor to me at the time, I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to France tomorrow." He said, "You have 12 days. I said, "Exactly. I'm on terra firma, and I'm going to France, Monaco, south of France." He said, "I really highly recommend you not go." And I said, "But it's free, and I'm going." And he said, "Good luck." And I said, "No, I'm fine." And it was an Air France flight, and they offered Chablis. Apparently I wasn't counting Chablis that day. And I had a couple splits of Chablis as we were flying, and then I swiped some Dalmane from my mother's medicine cabinet because I had trouble sleeping, and took 2 Dalmanes. And when we were landing in Paris, they couldn't wake me up because I was so passed out. I had a seatbelt indentation in my face for about 3 days, and it finally got me up. And I thought, "Oh my God, Roger was right. And it's sneaky. This disease is sneaky." And I got about another 5 days, and I'm not going to drink. First drink gets you drunk. I've been to those meetings, and finally in Monaco, the obsession came over me again. And I remember sitting down at a beautiful hotel in Monaco, sat down a little mini bar and opened it up and wonder what's in there. Took out a little bottle and I went, $4. Jeez. Boom, boom, boom. Got drunk. And how I finally got back to AA to stay was my buddy Joey hooked me up on a blind date with a girl. Let's just say I wasn't a good catch, and no one was hooking me up with anybody. And I went out with this girl, and she was pretty and cute and had a career, which meant I shouldn't ask her out again because she may say, "What do you do?" "I drink." "That's it?" "Pretty much. I drink. Watch Jeopardy." Almost was a lawyer. "How's your score coming? How's that film?" So I just thought we'd save each other the embarrassment of this and not ask her out again. But I did call her about 10 days later in the blackout and told her things I didn't tell my therapist, my girlfriend, my best friend, myself. And we're friends today. We had coffee a few months ago, and And I said, remind me of the conversation, because she was the sober one. And she said, you just talked about your drinking and you had another drunk driving by this point, but she said, you said, I feel like there's a hole in my soul. And she said, when you said that, I said, I'm going to take a chance and tell this guy that I'm in another 12-step program, and if you like, I'll take you to AA. And she said, I'm in another 12-step program, and there's a meeting right near you. It's Sunday, and I'll come over and get you if you want. And I said, okay. And she called me the next day to remind me, just in case I unsurrendered myself, and I didn't. And I had my last drink on Saturday night, August 9th, 1980, in a restaurant, and I left half a drink. I always wondered what that meant. I was really ready, I think part of that meant. And I think also the half a drink, it's waiting for me if I don't do the work and keep doing what we do here. And she walked me over to that meeting on Sunday morning, and she put me in the front row, and the magic happened for me. It's exactly the same power today as it was then. People share and I go, me too. All my life I had felt different, and you people shared how you felt, how you drank and how you felt separated from the world by a pane of glass, how alcohol dissolved that pane of glass, how you could feel better than and less than simultaneously. And I melted, I identified. And I took the first half of the first step. I am powerless over alcohol. You bet. I had spent years trying to have those 3 drinks and just lose interest in the project. The first drink gets you drunk. Got it. And I figured that's all I need to do. Just remove the alcohol, and I'm going to go straight back to law school, straight to the Supreme Court, and have money and a tan, and thanks. And I saw defective character defects, and I thought I do see a lot of defective characters in the room, but that certainly doesn't apply to me. Then my mother follows me into AA, and I always like to mention that I have more time than her. And I recommend if you can get more time than your mother, it's cool. I mean, it's all a gift, but it's kind of a cool gift to be sober, because they recommend stuff, and you can always say, well, Mom, maybe when you have my length of sobriety, you'll see that a little different. She got sober, she got little Millie as her sponsor. She followed me into AA. She says, well, you're not drinking. I said, no. She goes, how you doing it? I'm going to AA. She goes, do you think I'd like it? I said, I actually do like happy endings. There's happy endings in AA. And there are. And she went to AA and never drank again. She got little Millie as her sponsor. And one of the first things Millie told my mother was, stop giving me money. So my take on sponsors were they're people who get involved in stuff that's none of their goddamn business. What is, I'm not drinking. Jesus, give me a break. What does this have to do with anything? And I had been working in this travel agency, and this woman was paying me $1,000 a month, and when I got sober, I put myself on commission. And I made $78.12 my first month. These are the kind of decisions unsponsored newcomers make. So I'm not doing all that well. I don't have a sponsor because I don't share in meetings. I'm not working a step. I'm not drinking. I don't want a home group. I'm certainly not going to let people call on me. We remember the law school experience. I'm not taking that into AA. All right, so, and I'm not drinking. I'm not even thinking about drinking. I kind of like waking up knowing what I did last night. Good enough. And then I hear sponsors like, I hear this, don't get emotionally involved in your first 12 months. Well, come on, I know what you're saying. Don't have sex. That's what you're saying, and I'm kind of ready, you know. And sponsors may interfere with that. And a woman strolls into my travel agency where I'm working at, and I think, thank God you don't have a sponsor. He would start interfering with this little obsession here. And I pursued her and her St. Bernard into the gates of insanity. And we were, I don't know if these happened in Florida, but it was one of those relationships where I hate you, lay down, I love you kind of things. And she got pregnant, and I did not have a program, and I did not work a step, I did not have a friend. There was no fellowship. I did not have a home group. I did not have a sponsor. And she got pregnant, and I was as close to drinking as a person can get. And I went and took my 2-year cake at Roxbury Park and went straight to the hospital. My son Max was born. It's his birthday today. 28 years ago today. And I was probably as close to drinking as you could come. I knew I'd be a father to this kid from the beginning. I always knew I wasn't going to get along with this woman, but I was going to be this kid's father. And I had no income and I had no way out. And her parents came to town. They were obviously upset with me because I wasn't going to marry their daughter. And then Max wasn't going to be baptized because the priest decided that our relationship was unresolved and that let's wait to see what happens with the father. And her parents came and said, well, then you can't take the kid out of the house because a tree could fall on him and he could end up in limbo for 1 billion years. I'm Jewish. I don't know from this stuff. I want to get the baby away from these people is what I'm thinking. And I'm telling my mom this story and she says, this is so funny. I heard this Catholic priest share in AA last night. I'm going to get his number and you can call him and maybe you can manipulate him into baptizing Max Abrams. So the Jews are on the case. So I call up this guy. I go, hey, my name's Steve. I have this baby. I'm in AA. Yeah, you're in AA. Yeah, do you go to meetings? I do. I kind of hide in the back. I'm sure I didn't say that, but he goes, well, I'm speaking. Where do you live? In the Valley. I'm speaking there Friday night. Why don't we meet? We'll talk afterwards. To this day, we always talk after the meeting. It's funny, if you go to a meeting, the problems kind of go away by the time the meeting's over. They've moved the meeting into a courtyard. There was just a light on the speaker, and I sat there, and when the student's ready, the teacher appears. I always get tears in my eyes. I hope I always get tears in my eyes when I talk about this moment, because it's maybe more important than my sobriety date, because he shared and 2 things happened. 1, I knew he was smarter than me. I knew he was smarter than me. And 2, I knew I could trust him. I knew I wouldn't be judged. I knew what I told him would never be shared with another person. And he finished sharing, and I went up to him after the meeting, and I said the thing I think that's the most important thing to say at 30 days, or 30 years, or 30 minutes. Help. And he became my sponsor, and he has been for the last 28 years. And knew the most important relationship in my life, the one he's always thinking, the good sponsor is always kind of pointing you towards a higher power, and that's been the journey that I've been on. I worked the steps with this man. I remember writing an inventory and thinking, I don't want to share this stuff. I just met him. I want to impress him with all my talents. I don't want to But the truth is, we bond around here with our defects of character. And we bond by trusting each other. And we get free by sharing the stuff we feel bad about each other. And life has gone on these last 28 years. The good, the bad. I remember it 4 years. You know, I had a naive notion everything would be perfect. I remember when I was 4 months sober and John Lennon was assassinated, and I thought, it can't happen, I'm sober. It can't happen. I thought everything would be fine. And what happens is people get sick here, people die here, people struggle here. You fall in love here and your heart gets broken here. And we don't drink, because a drink won't help. No matter what we're going through, a drink won't help. And that's been my journey here. The journey has been to make this effort. My favorite amends was that guy in Chicago. He'd given me money. I had credit card debt when I got sober, because I was a big shot. If I saw you in a restaurant, I'd pick up your tab and go, oh my God, I'm deeper in debt. And I borrowed some money from him to get them off my back. And I'd call him by this time, I'd started a business. I was making a little money, and I thought, I got to pay him back. And he'd say, oh, no one ever pays me back. I have millions. Don't worry about it. I go, cool. And someone would say, I should charge a rent for being in my head. And I thought, oh, not cool. I think about that. I should give Shelley back his $5 grand. And then one day I had enough money, and I wrote him a check for the $5 grand. I gave it to him. He called me up crying. He said, no one ever pays me back. I'm impressed what AA has done for you. He says, I threw away your check. Can you you forget it now? I said, yeah, I can, actually. I called my sponsor. I said, this is a perfect amends story, Terry. Check this out. You make amends in the form of a check, and they throw it away. We're clean. He said, the perfect amends is when you write them a check and you want them to cash it. I said, well, I'll keep coming back. Oh, man. And lately it's the last 10 years has been, whenever they read that line in chapter 5, the point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. And I think I always kind of emotionally went, I am. I remember when I admitted to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. I remember that moment. I remember where I was driving exactly. It was like, this is an absolute truth. And when I hear that read, every meeting I go to, I go, I am absolutely willing to grow along spiritual lines. And then the last 10 years have been, how do I do this? I don't want to be worried. I don't want to live with dread. I don't want to be judgmental. I want to be free. And I've been following this path. My main beacon, as Sandy likes to call me, Sandy, of how do I get free of the ego? How do I live free? Happy, joyous, and free in the world. Because I think that's what it's offering us. That's what the program and the promises are offering us, is freedom from the ego, from this insatiable desire to need either adulation or money or affection. I want to be free. That's the journey I hope I'm on. I am far from it. I am appalled at my recovery. That's okay, because I'm still interested in my recovery. You just have to stay interested. You have to come here and submit yourself, surrender yourself, and keep coming back and go, I'm in, because it's good and better, and it's going to keep staying that way. And thanks.